Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on November 26, 2022 at approximately 2:59 p.m. PST. I've been looking at a lot of things over the last little while, but it really is time to start moving forward. Okay, so the idea here is real simple. Let's start looking at progress together. Let's take a look at where your life is right now and where you compared to where you desire it to be, or more to the point, where it is right now and what you're not content with. Let's start shifting the gear on that. We'll do it together, one step at a time. So the first thing you look at, okay, before we get anywhere in it, is this. You have to determine that this is the backbone of changing your life, in a sense. Okay. You have to decide, I am worth it. Now, the reason I bill myself as a spiritual guide is because the tools I offer are literally the tools I personally am using. Okay, the philosophies of life I talk about are the ones I personally live by. Now, most important of these, okay, are the three that are the backbone of everything I do. The three karmic laws. Be true to yourself first. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. And energy out, energy in. Now, I've talked a lot about these over the past. Okay, but from your standpoint, take a look at the way your life is going and ask yourself, when you compare yourself, good afternoon, Ken, glad you made it. Ask yourself, are you following those laws? And what I mean by that, take a look at the laws you do actually follow, whether they are spiritual, religious, family, support group issue, doesn't matter. Okay, compare the laws and the guidelines you live by, even the legal ones. And I do believe you will find that every one of the ones you look at fall inside the three that I follow. Now, if you find one that does not, for pity's sakes, please drop me a line and let me know which one it is. Because thus far, I have found none that won't fit. Okay. So that's the first thing we look at. The second thing we look at is, where do we start? Well, I've mentioned this idea of the list and of the dream board and how important they are, how powerful a tool these things can be. Okay. Now, a lot of my list happens to be done on computer at this point. But what I'm doing here, okay, I've got my sheet of paper. And what I'm going to do while I'm walking through things today is I'm going to actually be adding to the list to make sure I get these things done when I'm finished, when I get off the video. Now, here's the other thing. Whether we are talking about humans or any other species at all, literally any species, whether we are talking alien, off-world, ancient race, plant, animal, elemental, it doesn't matter. Every one of you follows the same guidelines. Every one of you has the same background as in, whatever your background, that'll vary. But whatever it is has led you to right here, right now. And this is the only time in your life, the only time in existence, you will ever be able to change anything. You cannot go back in time and change things. You cannot go back in time and alter what has already happened. You can certainly look back over what you've done and decide whether it had a functional outcome. Okay. But the way that reality works, reverse time travel, going back to change things, it makes great storylines. Absolutely fantastic storylines. Okay. Now, does the multiverse exist? That's a whole other topic. You can jump forward in time. Okay. But the problem is, if you jump forward in time, you can't come back. So there'll be a great big chunk of time that you're not recorded at all. And there are countless records of this happening. Okay, throughout the centuries, it has happened time and time again. But when we look at where your life is right now, ask yourself this: are you content with the way your life is currently running? If the answer is yes, this is fantastic. Stay on track. Okay, if the answer is no, then it's time to start altering what you're working on. Now, like I said, I'm going to go through paperwork while I'm here because this is a question of marking the path together. Hey, look at that. We came online here. Now I can actually see what I'm looking at. And what do we got? Yeah, that's a minor bit of a sidetrack, but it's kind of one that I need. Or that I require. There we are. Hey, Chad, how you doing? And YJ. In a sense, YJ, if you travel just a millisecond into the future, you'll see it. You won't be able to do anything with it for obvious reasons, but you'll catch up so fast. That's absolutely bizarre. Okay, but but to the past, the reality is, well, first of all, you can't travel to the past anyway. You can look to the past and see what's going on. Okay. The reality of it is, take a look at where your life is. Are you content with it? If the answer is no, then it's time to do something about it right now. Now, on this sheet of paper here, okay, this is a call sheet that I did last night because I was working, but I haven't submitted it yet. So the first thing on my list here, okay, is to literally mark it down that I actually write it down and get it dealt with. Okay, so I'm just looking at these. Whoops, did I have one there? Nope. So all I'm doing is this is paperwork that I've got to get to, and I've got to get it submitted and out of the way. Because once it's out of the way, I no longer have to deal with it. Now, this is how quick a list can travel, but for me, very important. And like I said, when it comes to the list, okay, it's strongly recommended that you put 3 on the list when you get one done. Okay, but keep these items to 15 minutes to half-hour tasks. Okay, that way you can get them checked off, and as you get them checked off, you add a third one to the bottom. Now, the reality of it is this: when you're doing that, okay, when you're doing that, the list is the immediate here and now. When we start looking at dream boards, that's when we start looking at the big picture items, the big projects that you've got. The fact that you dropped by at all there, Ken, I do appreciate you taking the time to pop in and join us. To me, that's a real bonus right there. Like, I really do appreciate the support. So, I mean, you look at what you're dealing with. Are you content with how it's happened? Now, I'm in the dream board. The idea there is this. Where is this particular little sheet here? Okay. As we've discussed before, multiple times in all fairness, I've got these in the Yldrbacian chronicles that are out. Okay. Now, because I've already got the cover designed for the Return to Paradise, which is the next one in line. Okay. Because we've got The Birth of the Wolf Pack is the first one that came into print. The End of an Epic is next. The Return to Paradise is the third one. I've already got the cover designed for it. And the cover design for the next one, which is Where It All Began. Okay. Now, after that, I ran into some interesting twists. Now, pardon the artwork. Okay. But as you can see here, this is just a terrible sketch, but I'm not an artist. Okay, so what I've got here is the design. I'm going to be contacting my artist in England, and just marking that down right now. Contact John, read book 2 and 3. Now I will take this information, which I realize you can't see very well. Okay, I mean that's terrible in all fairness. But that's just a sketch. You would not believe how I know I don't really believe it all that much. But that is a big goal. Okay, getting the Yldrbac Chronicles, the entire 12-volume set out. Now I've got 2 out. Yeah, I wish I could there, Ken. The unfortunate part is the way my schedule goes. I was planning on coming on this morning, but things just didn't work out that way. But what I will do from now on, if I can figure out the time frame, I will absolutely, send word out and say, okay, here's the time I'm coming on. Okay, probably won't be much more than about 3 hours notice anyway. But my schedule gets absolutely stupid. Okay, and thus far, that's been one of my biggest holdups. It's one of the reasons why I don't actually go, I'm coming on live at this point, because it just hasn't worked out that way all that well. Okay, the reality of it is that I know I'm lacking in the time frame or in time management. One of the biggest reasons I have that problem, in all fairness, is years ago, as in about 25 years ago, I got diagnosed with something called temporal dissociative disorder, which literally, as it was explained to me, meant I cannot track time if my life depends on it. I can't tell you how long I stand in one place or how long I sit talking unless I've got a clock right there. Okay, then I can do it. But as far as actually gauging it, it's not going to happen. I used to actually leave to take my son to work downtown, a 10-minute drive. And I would be edgy if I didn't get out the door 45 minutes ahead of time, because I couldn't figure out how long it was going to take to get there. Now I just don't go there. Well, he moved out. But when we're looking at the goals, okay, you break them down into smaller ones. Now, this piece of information has to go to my artist. I've now got it on the list, so it'll get done as soon as I'm done here. Okay, but take a look at where your life is going. Ask yourself, are you content with the way that your life is moving, with everything that's happening around you? I love that idea there, YJ. Basically, maybe it is. I don't know. I mean, from my standpoint, all I know is I've had a heck of a time. I remember talking, I didn't even know it was a real diagnosis. I thought the same thing as you are. Can't figure out how to classify it, so let's give it this name. Until about 20 years ago, I had to answer some questions for the police due to an accident I had witnessed. And, I'm laying everything out, and the cop is looking at me, really confused. I says, let me guess. The sequence is right, but the time frame is completely scrambled. She goes, scrambled? She says, it's absolutely impossible. I says, well, maybe this will help. This is what I've been diagnosed with. Well, her eyes lit up like a Christmas tree, and she goes, oh, I'll just write down at the bottom of my sheet. My boss will leave me alone. I says, what? You mean it's real? And she goes, oh, yeah. But she says, it is the hardest one to diagnose. And she goes, I'd love to meet the guy that did it. I says, well, frankly, I spent 20 years with the same psychiatrist. And she goes, oh, that would do it. So it gets worse when you realize that I have the instinctive ability to access wormholes. Okay, and yes, I know that's an outlandish claim. The only problem is I've done it with witnesses, and for that matter, participants. Okay, it's supposed to be from Kelowna, where I am, to Vancouver on the coast. Should be a 4 to 4.5 hour drive. Okay, but in the dead of winter, going through the mountain passes, I would take travelers with me. Okay, because I was working the psychic fair at the time, and we would consistently do the trip in 3.5 hours. Now I wouldn't drive over the 80 kilometer an hour mark usually because of the snow conditions, right? So I would take my sweet merry time. Problem is, I'd cut an hour off the travel time and 100 kilometers off the actual odometer. Now, I mean, my father, when I told him about it, he never even blinks. He goes, if you're going to do it, he says, you can't be playing around with that. He said, playing around with it? I says, Dad, you remember when I used to have blackouts? He goes, yeah. I says, you remember how I used to know I was going to have them by then, but by then it was too late? He goes, yeah, there was nothing you could do at that point. I said, I've got the same problem. I don't know I'm accessing the wormhole until I'm already in it. Right. He says, do you have any idea how dangerous that is? I says, yeah. I says, if I come in too high, I crash. If I come in too low, I blow up. Right. Fortunately, I was always coming in at about 2 inches off the ground. So there was a little bit of a jump, and then away we went. In my opinion, YJ, the Coke was great when the government was dealing with it, but the moment they privatized it, it became a nightmare. And therefore, I do agree with you. The whole Princeton is a better road at this point. In my case now, though, I prefer the airways. Needless to say, until the travel restrictions from COVID get removed, I won't be traveling very far anyway, because I just don't anymore. But you take a look at where your life is. Ask yourself, is what you're doing, is everything that's stopping you from attaining that, have you cleared it out of the way? Now, I start with the list. Okay, I started with a huge goal. I aimed at this idea of, I desire to change my life completely. Now, the new doctors coming out, okay, they'll come out with these brilliant statements. The idea of exercise and cutting down on what you eat doesn't work. You need this pill. Now, I'm not debating that the pill may work. Okay, but when you start dropping 30 to 40 pounds in a month, okay, you may find you're dropping a little fast. And besides that, in my opinion, you're taking all of that waste and running it through your kidneys, your liver, your bowels. You're overstressing the system. Now, I am not a medical doctor, but I will tell you, by simply increasing my activity level and cutting down the amount of food I was eating, I ended up, in the last year, I've dropped 50 pounds. And I'm still working at dropping more. But here's the thing. Okay, do the math. If you're putting in less calories than you're burning, you're going to drop weight. You don't have any options. Okay, it's like if you're bailing out more water out of a boat than is coming in, you will empty the boat. Okay, if you're not, you've got a problem. The boat sinks. Just take a look at the Titanic. That worked well. Okay, so I'm just looking at these. Whoops. Did I do something silly here? Probably. 23, 24, 25. Okay, those can all go there. Then we have this one, which is 1103. Like I said, this is just adding to the list that I have to deal with. And this is why I say, let's do this together. Take a look at where your life is right this second and ask yourself, are you content with the layout of everything? Okay, of everything going on. Now, for me, it's a pretty simple little process. Of course, I've been working at it for a while longer. Good afternoon, Joe. Glad you can make it. Hopefully, one of these days I will actually get a schedule together, but I'm not holding my breath. Oh, okay, perfect. That coincides with pretty much what I've always held. The assessment I came to, like, I really appreciate the confirmation there, YJ. What I came to the conclusion of is if you're losing a pound to a pound and a half a week, you're at a good drop, which, by the way, works out to 4 to 6 pounds, aka 5 pounds a month. Okay, now with that in mind, right now I'm personally sitting at 194. Now, according to the medical charts, at 5'8", at least the charts I've got, at 5'8", I should weigh about 145 pounds. Good luck with that. Right now, at my weight, what you're looking at is 194 pounds. Oh, okay. A wormhole, Joe, is literally you're traveling along and it folds space. When you were a kid, if you read a book called A Wrinkle in Time, I forget who the author was. Okay, but a wormhole boils down to, let me do it this way. Okay, let's say this end of the paper is one end of the wormhole. This one is the other end. Now you've got all this space to travel. Okay, but a wormhole folds that space so that you just all of a sudden end up at the other end with no time dilation. Okay, you just simply fold the amount of room between it and come out at the other end. Okay, if you're into Dungeons and Dragons, there's a spell called Dimension Door. It boils down to the same thing. You're folding space so you connect two ends of a hole at the same time. And all you do is step through one side of the door and out the other. That is the real Reader's Digest, way overly simplified idea of what a wormhole is. Because you're cutting through space, essentially cutting through the barriers. Okay. Now, I know of a couple, and like I said, I run them on instinct. So I don't always necessarily hit them, and I haven't traveled over the Coquihalla now. I haven't driven over the Coke in, what? I stopped in 7, so we're looking at 15 years. I just, because of the fact I nearly died on the Coke, I just gave up traveling on it. Just didn't have a whole lot of luck with it. I'm not sure if that came out right. Didn't die, didn't end up dying, and I think that was the lucky part, possibly, anyway. But you take a look at the stuff around you. Now, I look at the fact that I've got all this stuff on my desk. Okay, some of it is necessary, some of it is not. But when you find something, and where do you start with it to change where your life is heading, is right here, right now. Now, for me, I've got my desk right here. I've got my computer monitors on, got my printer, my phone, but I've got these extra pens that don't have to be sitting on my desk right now. So what I'm going to do while I'm thinking about it is just put them where they belong, aka over in the drawer over here. And again, it boils down to getting past the idea of procrastination. Because in all fairness, procrastination has never accomplished a whole lot for anybody except delaying things. Oh, absolutely, YJ. I will take a look at it. I won't be able to until after the show because I don't want to hang something up here but I will absolutely look at it, and we will make a note of dealing with what and my observations for next week. Well, this is Saturday, yeah. I will. What I'll do is make a note and make sure that we discuss that particular video next week. So absolutely do send it. That will be appreciated. Okay, now there's no doubt I'll be on before next week, but I will save the comments about the video you're going to send me. Okay, until then, if it doesn't come through, I will I can't see it not coming through. Just keep an eye open for it here. I'm working on a different screen, which is why I'm looking up at the roof here. And gee, I hate the fact that this doesn't. There we go. Okay, on the plus side there, YJ, the video showed up. I haven't looked at it yet, and like I said, I don't want to scramble something here, but I will absolutely take a look at it, and we will discuss my not whether it's a real video. Okay, I am not a video analyst. But I will look at whether or not it actually depicts what I know happens. Okay. That way we can get a serious look at the whole thing. But it has arrived, so we will take a look at that. Now, the reason I focus so much on the office, where you're working on your finances, where you're working on your organization, is because that is the brainchild of both your house, which is the physical place you're living in, and your home, which is the emotional base of where you're living. But the brainchild is your office, wherever you're working on the finances. Because I will tell you this, if your finances are not in order, you're going to find your stress level is way up here. Okay, the second you bring your finances and your cash flow into balance, your stress level comes down, your productivity level goes up, your energy goes up, your health improves. It's all interlocked. And quite seriously, when you bring your stress level down, this little issue corrects itself as well. Doctors have told me for years, once you're wearing, as you get older, your eyes are going to get worse. Okay. Well, I'm living proof that's not entirely accurate. Don't get me wrong, I wear glasses because I still don't have good distance vision. Okay, but I go back to 207, and if I held my glasses right there, I couldn't physically see them. Okay, but something you have to understand, and scientists have already essentially proven this one. Okay, every cell in the corporeal body replaces itself approximately every 7 years. Now, with this in mind, there is no viable reason that I can see that your health has to decline as you get older. Okay, there's no functional reason for it. If every cell is replaced every 7 years, essentially you should be able to live your life out for an indefinite period of time. This does require limiting the amount of toxin going into your body. Okay, and exercising properly, making sure you're burning at least as many calories as you're putting into your body. And I do mean the right type of calories. Now, I love the people that go, oh, get away from red meat. I have personally tried getting away from red meat. Problem is that the human genome is an omnivorous plant animal. You can tell this because, let's face it, herbivores don't have canines. They don't have cutting teeth. They just don't. Okay. Or more to the point, they don't have slicing teeth. That'd be absolutely fantastic, Joe. Okay, I'm just looking at what Joe wrote here. He goes, last night behind my house, it was dark. Can't imagine why. It was nighttime. Having a very nice campfire. I was hearing rumbling sounds and Indian drums, like like in the distance in the cemetery. I was outside a while. Oh, I'm guessing you hit enter before you finished that. Because you ended it with, I was outside a while trying. But the reality is, if you're sitting outside on the deck or at the campfire and you listen, you can hear the changes in the air around you. You can hear these different sounds. And quite often what you may be hearing is communication between either between different species, or you may even be bridging the time barrier and hearing things from the past. You won't be hearing things from the future. Okay, because the future does not come back to the past. But the nice part about it is that if you take a look at where your life is, and you go, okay, I'm not happy with the way my life is going at this point. Okay, then you can shift the direction your life is heading in and actually get the outcome you're seeking. Okay, that was necessary. What is this? 10:04. Yeah, like I mentioned, this really boils down to taking a look at the different things and different paper that I really should get dealt with, and I keep getting sidetracked. So as soon as I am done here today, I'll be writing these off. Works out kind of nice from my end. And what is that? 10:31. This is why I said you take a look at where your life is. Ask yourself, are you content? And yeah, I've gathered that over time there, Joe. And that's the nice part about it. I love the term the paranormal, because that's what everybody says. Oh, that's abnormal. You, like myself, the paranormal is probably more normal than the other stuff. Okay, I know I find it very difficult to understand how people can get so confused with what's going on. To me, it's just written out black and white. One of the biggest things I've noticed is people talk about getting along, and yet they will find the bizarrest ways of separating each other. Okay, like in all my life, literally, well, shouldn't say all my life. I guess I'd probably be 5 years old at the time I stopped separating people. Okay, where I came to the realization that no matter whether they had money, they didn't have money, no matter what their color was, okay, if I were to look at skin color of the people that were bullying me when I was a kid, I had more problems with Caucasians than I ever did with the so-called North American Indians. Okay, way more trouble. Okay, and yet I talked to all of them all the same way. Same as if you ever run into me in person, you'll find I deal with things in the same fashion. It's like, this is the way I'm looking at things. This is the way I'm dealing with them. Okay, and when I do that, the reason I don't treat people differently is because, frankly, I can't be bothered remembering who I talked to what about. But, okay, so you take a look at the stuff going on. Now, right now, I've got a list of things. This whole reef of paper here. Okay. Like that doesn't look like much. I think it's only about 10 sheets at this point. 8. Okay. But there's back sides to them. So I will get them out of the way and be done with it. Not to mention sending off the information to my artist. Okay. But what I found is this. if you do not stay focused, if you do not stay focused on what you're aiming for in your life, what you'll find happen is that either you start putting other people as a priority and you end up putting your life on hold. This doesn't work well, by the way. It's a really wonderful thought, but it doesn't work very well at all from what I've seen. Now, once you've got the area where you work on your primary living space sorted around, now take a look at the rest of it. Okay. And that stack of files there, that happens to be the hard copy work that I'm working on the Yldrbacian Chronicles. Now, it was a little thicker the other day, but I've been going through it piece at a time. And right now, my big goal is to get these books written, because not only am I just covering the story, okay, Joe. If you're looking for the UFOs, okay, sometimes it's not actually seeing them. Okay, but let me explain. First of all, quite often you will see the lights. Now, a satellite, I don't know if they run north, south, east, or west, okay? But what I do know is a satellite will travel in an absolutely straight line with no deviation in speed or trajectory. So if you're watching a straight line, more often than not, when I see them, I see red lights, okay? But whether they're red, white, blue, whatever color, I still have trouble with color. Okay, but you'll see a light travel in an absolutely straight, steady line. Okay, they don't deviate. So if you're watching a light and all of a sudden it stops and backs up, or it's traveling along and all of a sudden it goes sideways, this is not a satellite. Now let's be clear. A UFO is an unidentified flying object. If you cannot identify it, it's unidentified. Now that's first and foremost. But the other thing that you can find is if you're looking at the stars, and all of a sudden while you're watching, you've got a bunch of stars out, and you start seeing the stars, like if you look at the tips of my fingers and you see them blinking out, okay, and coming back into existence, okay, but at a static pace. What you're finding is something is there between you and the light. This means there is a UFO there. It may not be visible to you, but the effects of it blocking things is. Okay. And I mean, I'm not one to tell people what works and what doesn't, so to speak. But this is one of the easiest things to look for. The other one to watch for is if you're watching a light and all of a sudden you see it break off into 3 or 4 different pieces. Okay, then quite frankly, you're looking at a UFO. Okay, and again, bear in mind, just seeing a UFO does not mean you're getting set up for abduction. It may have nothing to do with it. It's kind of like watching a plane go overhead. You watch a plane go overhead, it doesn't mean it's coming to land at your site, nor does it mean that if a helicopter is going overhead or a car driving down the road, you're simply observing its transition. Doesn't mean you've got anything in danger that you're dealing with. It just means that this is traffic that you're seeing. But when you see it, do your best. When you see something that doesn't make sense, whether or not you've got a video of it, doesn't matter. Take a sheet of paper and write down the time and the event itself to the best of your ability, and just keep it on file. Okay, what you may find happen is you may find that same part of the sky has more activity that you see. Okay, it has more of the same type of event. Okay, at which point you can do your own research. Now, I'm a firm believer that everything that happens is not paranormal, but it is possible to get circumstantial evidence for pretty much everything that goes on. You just have to keep an eye open. Okay, and keep an open mind at the same time. The other thing you'll find, and this is why when I'm talking about changing your physical life, I talk about things that can be replicated. Okay, these are tools that I personally work with. When I first started talking about paranormal and parapsychological phenomenon, okay, I'd never heard the term. Now, from what I understand, the term was coined a long time ago, but I never actually heard the term consciously until I was in my mid-teens, early 20s. From what I gather, Joe, sounds like you've got a really neat area that you're living in where there's a lot of activity going on. And you pay attention to it, you can pick up a whole lot of different events going on. Okay. So, I mean, you're living in a great place for study on your own time. Okay. But do understand, the one caution is that everything going on around you is not necessarily paranormal. Okay. One obvious example from my standpoint is there is this phenomenon that people report around the world of a deep rumbling in the earth, where they hear this incredible rumbling sound. Okay, now here's the thing. I know in my eyes, I call it fact. Okay, in your eyes, you may call it mythology. But there was an ancient race, and we all know of them as dwarves. And in all fairness, they're real. Okay, you'll see them periodically walking around on Earth and never notice them, because they just look so normal, as it were. But they communicate in that fashion. And if there's a lot of conversation going on, you may hear that rumbling. Not to mention the equipment that they move around down there. Okay, and yes, this is in what people colloquially call Hollow Earth at this point. Hollow Earth or Inner Earth or Middle Earth or whatever. Okay, but like Shakespeare put it, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Okay, so I deal with things when I'm looking at the different tools I'm talking about. These apply to every race I've ever come across, every species I've come across. Okay, it was funny. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he looks at me and he goes, "The only difference between you and me, from that standpoint," he says, the animals just naturally understand what I'm doing. He goes, "You talk to the dang things." Right. So, I looked at him and I said, yeah, pretty much. But again, we're dealing with a staggering amount of circumstantial evidence with witnesses and what have you. Okay. So when you're taking a look at making your life something better, understand, very important, like what's just happened here. Okay. If you're looking to understand something or to accomplish something, talk to the people that have successfully done it. And in all fairness, that is very true. Okay, YJ is just mentioning some of the rumbling could be the boring company making tunnels. Okay, some could be very old species doing whatever they do down there. I'll clear that up. YJ is just saying, I'm convinced reptilians exist below ground in tunnels and caverns. In Africa, you have the Chitawari. In northern Canada, we have the Strazazians. Okay, we also have them scattered throughout the states. There are Teklek underneath New York. Okay, they've got pictures and they've got videos of them somewhere on YouTube. Okay, and there are many other reptilian races that are here. Some of them are off-world. Okay, in other words, they originated off-planet. Some of them literally evolved here. Okay, when you take a look at it, it's a combination of things that you'll hear. Okay, but you got to remember, when you're talking about the companies boring holes, and the companies are fracturing the Earth's crust, this is not a wise move. Okay, the reality is people are looking for they keep saying we need more energy. Well, the reality is you don't have to damage the planet to get it. Fan of? No. Do I enjoy, Joe's just asking if I'm a fan of WWE. I used to watch it. Of course, I haven't had cable in a while. I'm getting bits and pieces of it now. But do I enjoy the WWE? Yes. Do I? And the reason for that is some of these guys have phenomenal athletic capacity. They've taken the idea of what they desired to do with their life and dedicated it to it. Now, like most people, I'm fully aware that all of the conflicts, all of the showmanship there is choreographed to a degree. Okay, this does not alter the impressiveness of their physical form, of their physical talent. Okay, and what I have come to understand is that some of these people have phenomenal brains. Okay, the industry itself is riddled with all sorts of problems, just like every other industry. Okay, but to be honest, I've been watching wrestling since All-Star Wrestling back in the 70s. Okay, my dad actually used to have beer with Gene Kiniski of Gene Kiniski and Bulldog Brown fame. And if you've been watching wrestling for any length of time, you'll get to you may recognize those names. Of course, my father used to also have he'd have a beer with the Duke, with John Wayne. But yeah, do I like the wrestling? Certainly. Do I actually see it as a real event, as in a true competition? No, but it is great, and some of the storylines, they're a little tacky, but they're intriguing. The funny part about it is that many of those, they come up with absolutely incredible storylines that people remember for decades. Okay, just like people in real life. Some people come up with a lifestyle or a life persona that they portray to the world, and everybody recognizes that. They don't necessarily know the people behind the image, if you will. Okay, but again, when you're changing your world, okay, take a look at what you desire to portray. Now, I don't worry about my hair color because, quite frankly, from my standpoint, I started going gray when I was 16. So the fact I've got gray hair, who cares? Am I working on my health? Well, clearly, in the last year, I'm down 50 pounds. Now it's time to start building my muscle. Okay. But again, that boils down to that's something I desire to do. Okay, I will be increasing that. I will be changing my wardrobe, but I'm doing it in my own time for me. And that is the critical backbone of making any change in your own life. You've got to be doing it because you desire to. Okay, I've talked to many people. I used to drink a 26er a night. Okay, without even blinking. And I quit counting the cocaine I was using at 6 lines. Okay, quite often I did more, but that's okay. I don't do either of it now. I drink a couple, 3 times a year. Okay, at most. Usually that means Christmas, New Year's, and once in a while on my father's birthday. Okay. But where I used to kill a 26er a night, I now take 10 years to finish one. Okay, and that's if I've got help. But here's the thing. If you desire to quit drinking, quit smoking, quit drugs with no withdrawals. Okay, I have quit 2 out of 3 of those. Smoking, I never actually started. But I've talked to enough people that I've given a technique to, okay, where you can actually quit any one of those 3 without the withdrawals. Okay, without all that terrible side effects of it and the nightmare that goes hand in hand. Okay, I've talked about this in a previous video, I'm sure of it. But I am going to be putting a document together so that if somebody is interested in stopping any one of those, and for that matter, many other things. Okay. And again, the important part here is without withdrawal. Now, understand, I am not a licensed hypnotherapist. I'm talking about things that I have personally done. Okay, that's why I will stand behind them and say they work. Not guaranteed. Okay, but they do work. Okay, so I will put a document together. As a matter of fact, I'll do that today just on principle. Just in this way, if you desire that document after today, okay, you drop me a line at any one of the contact points below this video, okay, or any one of my other videos, and ask for it, and I will be more than happy to ship it to you. And here's the real bizarre kicker to it. I'll ship it to you without it costing you anything because it's simply going out over email. Okay, eventually I'll put it into a book, at which point it will cost. But the actual backbone of it, I will put together. Okay, but again, this is a question of talking to somebody. If you desire to do something, talk to somebody that has successfully done it. Okay, kind of critical because, if you desire to be a millionaire, I'm not the one to tell you, here's how to be a millionaire. Because frankly, I don't have $1 million in my pocket. I can tell you how to make money work when you're dealing with borderline bankruptcy, if you will. Been bankrupt twice, got that down to a fine art. Don't do it, if at all avoidable. And in most cases, it's very avoidable. If you think about it, the 2 times I went bankrupt, looking back on it, the only people that benefited from that were the so-called bankruptcy trustees. It shattered my credit rating. The people that I legitimately owed money to did not get paid. And the only people that made money were the ones that were actually saying, oh, we'll help you get out of debt. Yeah, you can do all of that and I can walk you through it. There's no problem. Okay, again, I am not a licensed financial advisor. I've never been trained. I simply have almost 60 years of experience. Okay. Now, if you're looking on how to make just about anything work, I will be more than happy to answer questions that people ask. But the reality of it is that if I don't have the answer, I'll be straightforward with you and go, I can't give you that answer because I don't have it, but check this area. You may find it there. Now, I'm lousy at doing research, personally. Okay. But when you get an idea in your head and you go, okay, this is what I desire. Okay, like when I look at the Yldrbacian Chronicles, that is where the majority of my focus is going. Okay, on how to get those written, how to get them lined up properly. And as it turns out, I now know for an absolute certainty that the Return to Paradise will not be out before Christmas. There's just no functional way that's going to happen. I still am pretty certain I'll get it written by Christmas, but I have to go through and edit it afterwards. And that's going to take some time. Okay, so with that in mind, that is where my real focus is. And I knew this right from the get-go that I was aiming for the end of the year, but it may be spring. It may be spring of 2023. So at this point, I'm looking at it going, I am going to get the thing written. This, the Return to Paradise. I will get it written before the end of the year. But then I'm going to need a couple months to get it edited to make sure it comes out the way I desire it to come out. I could push and go, let's get that thing put out and go, not happy with that idea. Not happy with it at all. With the idea of pushing it out before it's up to my specs. I've already done that and not happy with the outcome. So this time I'm just making absolutely certain that whatever I'm working on, I'm moving things out of the way to make it happen. Moving the things that are not cooperating with it. Okay. And I encourage you to do exactly the same thing. Now, here's the issue. If you're in a job that you're not content with, do not make the mistake of quitting said job until you actually have a fundamental, a financially feasible, replacement for it. Okay, because if you're not content with your job, yeah, you may well be spending more money trying to convince yourself you're happy. Problem is, if you quit the job, you won't be able to support yourself at all. I can see a problem with this personally. Okay, now, am I going to alter my life? Absolutely. And this is why I said we start on it now. Okay, and this is why I've got this list I've put together here. Right now, in all fairness, I've only been on here for an hour at this point, and I've already got 10 things that have to be done as soon as I get off this phone. Get off this video. Okay. Now, the thing is, if you've got questions that you're not entirely certain how to go about correcting, if you've got questions regarding how to alter the path you're currently on, absolutely ask me. Still working on the lungs. Just looking for the time, and it's arguing the point. There we go. Oh, would you look at that? See, just to be clear, in 1 week, as in next Friday, I'll be back on Spaced Out Radio. Okay, with Dave Scott. Okay, and that'll be from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific time. Okay, and I've said it many, many times that it's because of that show and the people that know me from that show that I am where I am at this point, where it comes to the videos, where it comes to the book, to this particular book. Okay. To this particular one. Okay. And yes, I'm still working on running into financial annoyances. Okay, because of overextension of actually trying to help people that, as it turned out, didn't appreciate the help anyway and didn't do anything they were supposed to with it. Which has put me behind the 8 ball. Okay, but on the plus side of that, I was talking to my brother today. Now, as I mentioned before, I lost my eldest brother back in March. Well, in all fairness, I didn't lose him. I know where he is. He passed away. But his estate will clear sometime before June of next year would be the theory. Okay, and at that point, I'll be sitting in good shape and I'll figure out what to do then. But right now, it's a case of play it by ear and try and push things around to get things to happen properly. This is why I say, if you're asking about being a millionaire, I'm certainly not the one to talk to just yet. Okay. Well, that reminds me. I also have to contact Harry. Harry is a chap that is helping me put together my Amazon store. And so that should be up right quickly. Right quick like. It's just a question of making everything happen. Because I've spent a staggering amount of money with companies that have claimed to be able to help me with things. And frankly, what I've come to understand is they're great with the sales pitch. And on the whole, and if you run a company yourself, this is just understand this may not apply to you. But with the companies and the governments I've dealt with, on the whole, they are great at sales and telling you what they can do, et cetera, lousy at fulfillment. Okay. If you're running a company, it is absolutely imperative that you turn around and if you're going to claim you do something, back it up. I wrote a poem years ago, called Words and Emotions. And yes, it did end up with it published. Don't know where the book is offhand. Okay, but what it boils down to is this. If you're going to claim that you're going to do something, follow through with it. Back it up if at all possible. Okay, very important from that standpoint. Okay, this is just the reality of it. And I hate to do this, but this is why I don't say how long I'm going to be, but obviously my throat's going to start seizing here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this to a close. I've been here for an hour, and I will absolutely do my best to give people a couple hours notice as to when I'll be back on. Okay, but I have to be aware that I'm still dealing with double pneumonia. So with this in mind, I'm going to bring this to a close. I do want to say thank you so much, people, for being with me, for joining me today. Really, really happy to see you here. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for the great questions. And I will be back. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.